Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming to yet another Cutter historical video. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Kitchener Rangers, my hometown team. We have just won our third Memorial Cup, as in the Canadian Junior Championships. We've been to 7 trips to the Memorial Cup, and strange as it sounds, we've been to the finals all 7 years. So we won in 82, 03, and 2026, subsequently losing in 81, 84, 90, and 2008. It's actually kind of strange. So yeah, we bought LWLLWLW. That's a weird path. So anyway, the 7 World Cups is the most of any of the Canadian Hockey League teams since 1972, when they changed it from an East-West battle to a whole orthodox, round robin. Anyway, so yeah, and we were OHL champs in 81, 82, 2003, 2008, 2026, getting to 2 Memorial Cups, 84 and 90. My other weeks. Publicly ordered with the board of directors, so we don't have a major owner. 180 players and coaches going on to serve in the NHL and all that. 5 alumni in the Hall of Fame. We'll talk about them later. As you can see on the right hand side of the sidebar, Kitchener OHL, we're in the Western Conference, Midwest Division, founded in 1963 officially. We're in the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium Complex. We'll talk about that a little later. Blue, red, and white is our colors. Mike McKenzie, our general manager, the son of Bob McKenzie. Yuzia Hokas is our head coach for now, maybe. Cam Reed is our captain. That drafted 21st by the Nashville Predators, and now hopefully Cameron Reed does a good career. The website affiliates of the Greater Ontario Junior League is Kitchener's Waterloo Siskins. We were once kind of Guelph before the Indians and the Biltmores and the Guelph Royals, but it was inaugurated in the OHA as the Guelph Biltmore Mad Hatters because of the hatting company. And it was a farm team for the NHL's New York Rangers. Enjoyed considerable success in the 1950s, winning a Memorial Cup. They were sold to new ownership, but by 1963, Eugene George actually moved the team to Kitchener. George and a group of Kitchener businessmen relocated Guelph to Kitchener, renamed them the Junior A Hockey Club. The original sponsorship of the team ended in 1967 with the expansion of the original Six era, which meant that they couldn't do anything, and the draft was all that. So Eugene George actually purchased the team from New York for $1, but did not want private ownership. So he decided to do membership and all that. So anyhow, in the 1960s, they moved into the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, and Kitchener's first regular season game, October 15, 1963, against St. Catharines, which was the Blackhawks feeder team, which had Dennis Hall, who recently passed away a few days ago, and Doug Jarrett. The first goal and team captain was John Beachy. Sandy Fitzpatrick was our first captain, and the Butchers won 4-3. Unfortunately, though, they went 9-41-6. They would struggle for years. And in 1967, first place in the OHL, but lost to Toronto. And then again, we were first in the league, 1968, but lost to Niagara Falls, who won the Memorial Cup. Bill Barber started in 1969 as rookie, and everything happened. Kitchener went through only 2 winning seasons in the decade. 1974, they were actually first in the OHL, thanks to Don Edwards, but they lost to Peterborough. Kitchener got to host the Memorial Cup, but that was before the host team format was in place. So, the city got to host it. So anyway, Dwight Foster, iconic player who passed away last year. 382 points in 262 games is a club record. The Rangers fell flat in 1980, but they picked up Paul Coffey from Sault Ste. Marie. And then he was drafted 6th overall by the Oilers. In 1981, for some strange reason, it was a terrible Christmas, and then they jumped up to 34, 33, and won the division. 49 goals, 116 points from Brian Bellows, who would go on to bigger and better things with the Montreal Canadiens, 93 Stanley Cup champs. 54 goals from Jeff Larmer. I don't think he won a cup, Stanley Cup. Grant Martin almost got to 100 points. Al McGinnis, Mike Eagles, Larry Carroll, and Wendell Young were standouts on that squad. Kitchener played against Niagara Falls in the playoffs and beat them in the first round. Then they meet Windsor and beat them. And they went to the OHL finals against Sault Ste. Marie. But the Rangers put up some great defense, and Sault Ste. Marie fell. Kitchener went to the Memorial Cup in Windsor. The Western Hockey League was Victoria, the great Grand Fuhrer in the net with Barry Pedersen, who would soon be part of a terrible trade from Vancouver to Boston for Cam Neely. Quebec had Cornwall, which was strange because Cornwall wasn't placed in Ontario. Dale Hawerchuk and Doug Doug Gilmore were on that squad. Kitchener lost the first 2 games to Cornwall and Victoria, but then won consecutive games and actually got to the final against Cornwall, but lost. In 1982, Joe Crozier took over because Orville Tassi, the coach and GM, went to be the head coach of the New Brunswick Hawks of the AHL, which was Chicago's AHL club. Kitchener picked up where he left off, getting Brian Bellows and Jeff Lerner back, and then picked up Scott Stevens and Mike Hood. Rangers won 44 games, won the division, first round bye, and then swept Windsor, and then took down the Sault Ste. Marie 5, and then crushed the Ottawa 67s in 4 straight. Then went to Hull, Quebec, now known as Canada, in the Robert Goodrich Arena for the 82 Memorial Cup. Kitchener was the OHL representative. The Quebec League was the Sherbrooke Castors or Beavers, as they call it in English. Gerald Gerlant was on that team. The guy who stomped on Boris Tommy's face and gave him a 200-stitch cut. Ken Yarmachuk for the Portland Winterhawks, who were trying to become the first American team to win the Canadian title. Kitchener got butted with by Sherbrooke, but beat Portland. And in the third game, the Rangers got back and took down the Castors, and then Kitchener lost to Portland. But thanks to a goals differential, both Kitchener and Sherbrooke got in, and Bellows put up 5 points, including a hat trick, to beat Sherbrooke 7-4. In 83, defending the Cup, 45 wins. They faced North Bay in round 2 and won 4-1, but then they lost to Sault Ste. Marie this time. In 1984, Kitchener was given the right to host the event in 1984, provided the arena got to host it, and then their Kitchener got to play in it, provided they did well. But they put up 52 wins, won the OHL's best mark, so it justified their trip to the Memorial Cup. Wayne Presley, future Blackhawk, did well. John Tucker, future Sabre and Lightning. Sean Burr, who once scored a key overtime goal as a rookie with the Detroit Red Wings, also was on the team. He was Rookie of the Year. Kitchener swept London in the second round. Then they beat Sault Ste. Marie in 7 games, and then lost to Ottawa in the OHL finals. Thankfully, though, they got to host the Memorial Cup, and they represented the host team when they changed it to 4 teams. The 67s had Gary Roberts, the guy who lost a couple years due to a freak neck injury, but came back stronger than ever. And Darren Pang, you know him, holy jumping from broadcasts of many color commentating with a lot of teams. Western Hockey League was joined by Kamloops with Dean Evanson and Doug Bodger. You know Bodger, the guy who was traded from Pittsburgh to Buffalo in the trade that had Tom Barrasso go to Pittsburgh. And Kamloops represented the West. No, sorry, Kamloops. Sorry, the Quebecois went to Laval. It was a 17-year-old Mario Lemieux who was draft eligible. He scored 133 goals in 70 regular season games that year. Kitchener crushed Laval 8-2 and then beat Kamloops 9-7. Ottawa also won their first 2 games. So Kitchener had to face Ottawa, winner take all, to go to the finals, and Kitchener won. But somehow, in some way, Ottawa won the semifinal and beat Kitchener 7-2. It was like, what the hell? Kitchener would not do much. They won the M's division in 1989, but fell to North Bay, one of the biggest upsets ever. Kitchener was a 1 seed, North Bay was an 8 seed. In 1990, they won 38 games and shocked everyone in the playoffs. They beat North Bay, they got their revenge, got a bye in the second round, faced Niagara Falls, beat them in 5 games, and then faced Oshawa in the OHL final. Kitchener had a 3-1 series lead, but lost 3 straight. So Oshawa were going to go to the Memorial Cup in Hamilton, so that was bad luck. However, because Hamilton's OHL team sucked terribly and won only 11 games, they were basically not allowed to play in the tournament. So the OHL got to bring their second place team, and that was Kitchener. So Kitchener took Hamilton's spot. Quebec were represented by Laval, and the Western Hockey League was represented by Kamloops, who were a couple years away from one of the greatest dynasties in junior history. Kitchener beat Kamloops in overtime, beat Laval, and then they would have to play Oshawa. Both teams at 2-0. Oshawa had to win that round robin game in double overtime. Kitchener beat Laval in the semis and then went to the final and lost in double overtime on a goal by Bill Armstrong, if I remember correctly. Kitchener had a luck last through 90s. They did win the Central title in 1997, but couldn't beat the Generals. So basically, the late 90s were terrible. In the early 2000s, Peter DeBoer, who was once Plymouth's star coach, was picked up by the Kitchener Rangers. He got them to 35 wins, but lost to Guelph in the playoffs. In 2003, Steve Spott, DeBoer's assistant, was brought in to be the assistant. And the team had Mike Richards, Derek Roy, Greg McCampbell, and David Clarkson, among others. They actually started off terribly, 0-3-1. But they picked up a lot of things happening. They won 46 games, lost 14, tied 5, overtime lost 3 times, winning the Midwest Division, making it franchise best. They took on Sault Ste. Marie, swept them, took down Guelph in 5, and then took on Plymouth. Plymouth was up 3-2 on a Jimmy Gagnon overtime goal. But then Kitchener won Game 6 in Plymouth and then won Game 7 on home turf to get to the OHL final against Ottawa and Brian Kilray, and Kitchener won 4 out of 5. And then in 2003, the Memorial Cup was played at the Colisée in Quebec City. The Ramparts, the host Ramparts, didn't really have any star players. Hall had Max Talbot, Maxine Talbot. Kitchener were the OHL champs, and the Kelowna Rockets were the Western champs. Duncan Keefe and Shea Weber on that team at the same time. Duncan Keefe in the Hall of Fame. Shea Weber, I don't know if he'll be in the Hall of Fame. Kitchener beat Quebec, both the Quebec teams and the Rockets. So that meant Kitchener got a bid to the final. They would face the Olympique and beat them 6-3. They won 34 games in defense of the Memorial Cup, but lost the first round to Plymouth. They put up 47 wins in 2006 and were shocked by Owen Sound in the first round. Another 47-win season in 07. They lost in the first. Lost the second round to Plymouth. Fortunately, though, Kitchener got a break. In 2008, May 2007, it was revealed that they would be hosting the 2008 Memorial Cup. So as long as they did well and made the playoffs, they got to compete in the OHL champ as well. However, the 2008 team were buoyed by this, won 53 games, which is still a franchise best in wins and points ever. Swept Plymouth, swept Sarnia, and then took down Sault Ste. Marie in 5. Kitchener would play Belleville. Kitchener was up 3-0, but they choked 4-5-6, but won Game 7, thankfully. They beat the Bulls. So, of course, Kitchener was in. Belleville was in with the great Matt Bolesky and P.K. Subban. Spokane were represented by Jared Spurgeon, Jared Cowan, and Dustin Tokarski. Gatineau came in with Claude Giroux and Paul Byron, who would go on to have a fantastic flying goal for the Habs in the 2021 playoffs against Leafs. Kitchener beat Gatineau. Screw it. McAfee. Kitchener beat Gatineau, lost to Spokane, lost to Belleville. Fortunately, though, they got third place. They got to play Belleville in a rematch 2 nights After that loss to Belleville, they crushed them 9-0, sending PK home unhappy. Kitchener lost to Spokane 4-1. Tokarski was just amazing in net. Can't have that. And unfortunately, they stupidly decided to break the trophy. Peter DeBoer would be going to the Florida Panthers as head coach. Steve Spott was named as the head coach. Unfortunately, in 2009, they lost many graduating players from the squad. Kind of what 2026 allegedly will be like. In 2009, Ben Finelli was playing against Erie, but Michael Liambes was hit him from behind. It was with such force as Finelli's helmet flew off before his head struck a glass partition at the Samboni entrance, getting a fractured skull, orbital bone, and airlifted to Hamilton Hospital. Liambes was booted for the rest of the season in the playoffs. Finelli came back 2 years later to be Rangers team captain. In 2009 10, and 10, Jeff Skinner put up 50 goals. Jeremy Moran put up 47. They beat Saginaw in 6 games in round one, took care of London in game 7, thank goodness. And then we're up 3-0 on Windsor in the conference final, but fucked it up. And Windsor went on to win a Memorial Cup. Lots of things happened. London swept them in the conference finals in 2012. So there was a lot of things going on and all of that. It did look pretty good and all of that. In 2018, they did beat Guelph and Sarnia to meet Sault Ste. Marie in the Western Final. Unfortunately, though, it went to double overtime. Sault Ste. Marie got to the OHL final. I think they lost. Maybe serves me right, but yeah. The 2020s, Kitchener beat London. I think it was 2022 in Game 7 in the second round, which was sweet. Kitchener were the 8th seed in 2023, but somehow swept Windsor in the first round 4-0. And then in 2025, Kitchener completed the reverse sweep on Windsor. 2026 World Memorial Cup. Kitchener got in by winning 16 out of 18 games against, if I can remember correctly, Flint, Sault Ste. Marie, Windsor. Yeah, Flint, Sault Ste. Marie, Windsor, and Barrie. And all that. They were 16-2. So they went to the Memorial Cup. Everett represented the Western Hockey League with Landon Dupont, who is a draft prospect next year. Chicoutimi, led by Maxime Massé, and Kelowna was led by Tij Ginla, a.k.a. Joe Ginla's son. Kitchener beat Kelowna 5-0, Everett 6-2, and Chicoutimi 3-2. So they swept, got to the finals, and Everett won the somebody against Chicoutimi. Of course, Chicoutimi, that damn Tourcoing guy, stomped on Christian Humphreys' foot 3 times, which was stupid. But the joke was on them. Christian Humphreys scored a goal. And then Kitchener was up 3-1 until that damn number 19 decided to cross-check O'Reilly when he was down. There was no penalty, but then they did the cross-check. That was it. So a 5-on-3 goal. Jack Pridham scored, and then Sam O'Reilly scored to get 5-1. It was 5-2 after a goal by Everett, but then Christian Humphrey scored the empty netter, and it was over 6-2. And their first Memorial Cup since 2003. 7 trips to the Memorial Cup. Okay, so this is a big stat. Kitchener does not retire numbers except for the number 1. They chose to honor players. They honored the 5 Rangers alumni in the Hall of Fame. Scott Stevens, known for his great job with the Devils and his booming playoff hits, although he started a career as Washington and then went to St. Louis for 1 year, but then was given to New Jersey because St. Louis signed Brendan Shanahan. Al McGinnis, booming shot from Nova Scotia. Kitchener knew how to recruit, and McGinnis started his career at Calgary and then ended with St. Louis, and that was it. Paul Coffey, great player for Edmonton. Then he went to Pittsburgh after completing a contract. Then got sent to Los Angeles, Detroit, Carolina, Boston, and I think one or two more teams. Bill Barber, number 7. Bill Barber, legendary player, 12 years with the Philadelphia Flyers, no other team. And Larry Robinson, first rounder from went to Montreal and played 16 good years for them until he went to Los Angeles for a few more. They lost a few players due to major accidents, but they have 186 alumni in the NHL or World Hockey Association. This is some of the easier ones, the ones you should know about. Jason Atkinson, good right winger. Justin Bailey as well. Bill Barber, as I talked about. Brian Bellows, star for both Minnesota and Montreal in the NHL. Andre Benoit, underrated defenseman, but more in the Kitchener thing. Michael Bodker, back-to-back overtime goals for the Coyotes in the 2012 playoffs against the Blackhawks. And of course, Chris Cuthbert said it after Game 3. He said, the former Kitchener Ranger. Gave me some pride. Robert Bertuzzo, who was all that. Sean Burr, who scored an overtime goal as a member of the Detroit Red Wings in his rookie year. Gregory Campbell, known for being the shadow and all that for Boston and Florida. Jack Eagers, a good defenseman. Steve Eminger was a Washington prospect and then got sent back to Kitchener for the 2003 Memorial Cup run. Radek Faksa, who plays for Dallas still. Jumpin' Joe Fortunato, was a Kitchener Ranger at one time. Dwight Foster, the legend, setting a lot of Kitchener records. He passed away last year. John Gibson, who was a star for Anaheim before they went with Dostal in the net. He's now with Detroit. Gaston Shingra, who played for the Habitants in 1986 when they won the Cup. Matt Helischuk, overtime heroics for Nashville once against Vancouver in the 2011 playoffs, and also at the 2008 World Juniors, giving us the gold medal. Mike Hoffman, who that was like man. Mike knowing things for Quebec and Florida, the 96 run. Dale Hunter, yeah, he played for the Kitchener Rangers. I don't want to think about it. Alan McGinnis, booming shot. The Maloney boys, Dave and Don, who were Rangers icons. Steve Mason, who was decent for Columbus and Philly. Joe McDonald, who was a good head coach. Dave McElwain, who once played for 4 teams in the 1991-92 season. John Moore, good defenseman for the Kitchener Rangers, terrible elsewhere. Jeremy Morin didn't really pay for a good career. Tobias Reeder for Dallas. Doug Riceborough, great player, known for his warm-up shot that knocked Buddy LaRock cold before Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final in '79 against the Rangers, which led to Ken Dryden coming back in the net. Barry Robinson, icon. Derek Roy, great player for Buffalo and a few other teams. Warren Reichel as a Kitchener Ranger. I know he was the manager of the Windsor Spitfires when they won back-to-back Memorial Cups. Jim Sandlak, great player for the Vancouver Canucks, if you will. Ted Scarf, good builder. Rod Stedelbauer for the Vancouver Canucks. Sean Shanahan, who was one of those players traded by Montreal to Colorado for Colorado's first-round pick in 1980. Well, of course, that trade was in 1978, if I remember right. And Shanahan never played in the NHL, and Montreal got Colorado's #1 pick, which ended up being the #1 pick overall. And Montreal could have taken Dennis Savard, who was honored pre-game of the Memorial Cup alongside Eric Lindros and Shea Weber, but nope. They took Doug Wickenheiser. He was a decent player for the Blues. Then he went to Chicago 3rd overall, and then Montreal at least picked him up and gave him a Stanley Cup ring. David Shaw, good player for the New York Rangers. Jeff Skinner, Carolina icon. Nick Spalling, Steve Spott. Scott Stevens and Mike Stevens. I guess Mike is Scott's brother. Shane Stevenson, who was a flop. Ryan Murphy, who I just said, come on, just make one Team Canada junior team, but he never did. Rick Chartreux from Venezuela, but he played for the Habs and all that. David Clarkson, who was a great devil. The Leafs needed him for free agency. Lo and behold, he basically was just shit with the Leafs. Paul Coffey, yep. Frank Corrado, who was the color commentator to Dustin Nielsen's play-by-play for TSN yesterday. Dave Cressman, I think he played for Minnesota. I think I can't remember. Peter DeBoer, yep. Boyd Deverell, a, who played for a couple of Canada's gold medal World Juniors teams in the '90s. He was a Leaf and a Red Wing. Gilbert Dion, who is Marcel's brother. It's strange how Marcel's brother decided to play in the OHL instead of the Quebec League, like Marcel. But yeah, Gilbert Dion was part of the OHL team in 1990 and scored an overtime goal against Buffalo in the '93 playoffs. Steve Downey, who was a kind of a goon and maybe disown him. Mike Eagles, Don Edwards, great goalie for Buffalo, although he would be known for giving up Gretzky's 77th goal, who beating Espo in the goal scoring thing. Robbie Irons, who had only 3 minutes of play in the NHL as goalie for the St. Louis Blues and all that. Nassim Kadri, great player for Colorado, winning a ring. Unfortunately for me, Kadri will always be remembered for getting penalty and suspensions. At the worst part being in the Leafs in the playoffs. Peter Kankel, known for his multicolored mohawk and all that in the 2003 Rem Cup. Sheldon Kangasser, the guy who kind of cartwheeled Bobby Orr and gave him one of his knee problems. Yak Kindo, who once scored an overtime goal for the Red Wings in Toronto. Nick Kyprios, I didn't know he was a Leaf. Gabe Landeskog, Colorado's captain. He's missed a few years because of injury. Jeff Larmer, Chicago. Matt Lashoff for Boston one time. Ray LeBlanc played for the U.S. in the '92 Olympics. Josh Levo, decent player. Don Luce, Luce, great play for Buffalo. Um, Clyde Noel, who was coach for Montreal for a while. Jerry O'Flaherty, Serge Paillet, good play for Florida in a sense. Walt Poondaby, I have his card with the Devils, but I didn't know he was a Kitchener Ranger. Wayne Presley, Chicago. Matt Pumple, okay. Paul Reinhardt, who once scored a hat trick in the playoffs for Vancouver against Calgary. Was it Calgary or Vancouver? I can't remember. Stephen Rice, he was a bust. Well, he was one of the players traded to Edmonton from the New York Rangers for Mark Messier. Mike Richards, icon for Philly and LA. Philly traded him thinking that he was just a party animal, but the joke was on them. He won 2 rings with the Kings, whereas Philly has not had one since 1975. Well, it could be worse. You could be a Leaf fan. Orville Tessier, great coach. Walt Kachuk, who was the shutdown center for the New York Rangers from 1968 to 1981. Mike Torquia, good OHL goalie, terrible elsewhere. John Tucker, as I said, from uh, uh, Buffalo/Tampa. Boris Felabic from Atlanta. Todd Warner, former Leaf, was a Kitchener Ranger one time. Yannick Weber, Craig Luedden, I was covered the Nordiques. Jason York, and Arbor Shurka, known for being with the Habitants right now. And Wendell Young, who is the only goal. I think the first, or is he the only goalie? He's the only player to win the junior title, which is the Memorial Cup, the AHL championship, the NHL championship, and the IHL championship because the IHL is non-existent. Lots of awards. The arena were Kitchener. Um, Adding more seats in 2008 because of the Memorial Cup, and then expanded. We had to destroy Centennial Stadium because of safety concerns. So 7,700 people would fit Kitchener Rangers game. 7,068 seats plus 632 standing room. 4 Memorial Cup, 62, 75, 84, and 2008 for us. 2 OHL All-Star games, but not since 1985. Season by season. You could basically see that. See how good the Kitchener Rangers are. I don't want to get too much into detail. And that's it. So that's for the Kitchener Rangers. And now for the auditorium. It's a multi-use municipal-owned facility. It's on East Avenue near Ottawa Street. It has 2 arenas, the Kinsman Arena and the Kiwanis Arena. That's for the junior teams. Jack Couch Stadium for baseball and Centennial Stadium for track and field. The Odd has total capacity of 7,777 to the Kitchener Rangers, and the KW Titans of the Basketball Super League. The KW Titans choked Game 7 on home turf. We could have had 2 championships, if you will. The original arena was built in 1950 and has expanded 3 times since. Yeah, I didn't know we hosted 1962 Memorial Cup. Also, a couple of top prospects game. I think 2021 was one. OHL All Star games. The 1986 World Juniors when Canada beat West Germany 18-2. Why can't I find any games for this? Like, it's pathetic. It's pathetic. Why can't I find Canada versus West Germany stuff for the 1986 World Juniors? I would like to see Kitchener. I think Kitchener hosted. I think there were other World Juniors. Like, yeah, Hamilton, London, Aurelia, Newmarket, Kitchener, where Canada hosts West Germany. St. Catharines, Oshawa, Hamilton, Guelph, Stratford even hosted one, Sweden versus Czechia. Toronto, Hamilton, Dundas, Kitchener hosted the Russians, taking on West Germany 10-0. Fellow Soviets. Oshawa, Toronto, London, Hamilton, Oakville, Hamilton, Brantford hosted one between Czechs and Finland. Halton Hills, Niagara Falls, Hamilton, Brantford, Hamilton. All right, we posted the Four Nations Cup for women's hockey, Skate Canada, Scotty Tournament of Hearts. I think it was '94, wasn't it? World Junior WCW Monday Night Nitro at WWE. There's been some concerts. Pearl Jam, Backstreet Boys, Bob Dylan, Brian Adams, Elton John played there. Genesis, Hillary Duff, In Excess, Led Zeppelin, Michael Bublé, and the Tragically Hip. Toronto used to have it for training camps, and there were some NBA exhibition games. So yeah, there's renovations and all of that. Centennial Stadium was a football stadium and then was demolished. And the grandstand was deemed unsafe. And Jack Hill Park is where the baseball team plays. And that's all. So everything goes smoothly for the Kitchenerrrrrs. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.